Welcome, foolish mortals, back to the channel. It's just going to be me tonight for our Disney newsreel, because our schedules have changed, and so everything got thrown off a little bit, and so you're just getting me tonight. But there are a few stories that I wanted to go over. A couple of them are pretty interesting, and there's one that makes me extremely angry. So you'll have to bear with me. There's about 5 stories. None of them should take very long. 2 of them are actually related to each other, so those will end up kind of getting mashed together. So, but before I get into the news today, make sure if you are not subscribed to the channel, you go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Also, make sure that you leave us a like and a comment and let us know how we're doing, and let us know any other interesting things you hear about the Disney parks or anything like that, because we would like to know. So, the first story I picked was actually one that Anna and I had talked about earlier today. She had actually come across it while I was at work, and she was at home here. And that is a new Star Wars Rise of the Resistance boarding group procedure announced starting on November 3rd. So essentially what this is, so the way that the Rise of the Resistance boarding groups work at Disney World and Disneyland, but they're not open right now, so it doesn't matter, is that you can get a boarding group twice in a day. There's a chance to get a boarding group twice in a day. Once at what was 10 a.m. right around park at park opening. Yeah, 10 a.m. park opening, and then again at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So they're changing that up a little bit, and because the rules for that were that you had to not only have a park pass and ticket and things like that, but you also had to be in the park. Like, it would use your location services and to make sure that you were actually in the park before you could get the boarding group. So they're making some slight changes to that. So instead of being a 10 a.m., it's going to be a 7 a.m. for the first one, and then 2 p.m. still for the second one. Now, the second one is still the same rules. You have to be in the park, you have to have, and so obviously you have to have the park pass and ticket. But for the 7 a.m. one, you don't have to be in the park. They're doing a virtual one, so that as long as you have a ticket and a park pass, a valid park pass for that day, then at 7 a.m. with those bookings that open up, then boarding groups, you can get one of those boarding groups, or try to get, because it's really hard to do, try to get one of those boarding groups without being in the park, which is really nice for most people, because people were having to arrive at Hollywood Studios at like 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes, in order to try to make sure they would be able to be there for the boarding groups, because that's how crazy this got. So let's see what some of this says. They now have the option of booking as early as 7 a.m. on the day of their park pass, from the comfort of their hotel room or any location near the park. So as long as you're near the park, which essentially means, to me, that essentially means that you're on Disney property. So I think it will most likely still use location services just to make sure you're on Disney property or something like that, and not like, you're gonna drive down from like Brunswick, Georgia that morning, which is like a 3-hour drive. I only know that because we've been looking at moving over to that area down the southeast, and so that's one of the places we've looked. But yeah, so it looks like it'll just be essentially to make sure that you are within that distance. But again, it starts on November 3rd, and this will be really good, because again, it'll make sure that people don't have to show up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning in order to get one of these boarding groups, and so it'll just be, I think it'll make things go a lot smoother. So, all right, the second story, which is the one that makes me this story, the title of this article is "Guest Arrested for Bringing Loaded Gun to Ticket and Transportation Center, TTC, at Walt Disney World, states 6-year-old was supposed to, quote, watch over it." And this article caught my attention because of that part. That last statement there, the 6-year-old was supposed to watch over it. That's what mostly caught my attention about this. And it makes me absolutely furious. So, here's kind of what happened, the gist of what happened. So, and this is like the 3rd or 4th gun incident within just the last few months at Disney World, and it's getting ridiculous. And so what happened is there was this lady, a guest. She was arrested for carrying a concealed, loaded 9mm handgun and attempting to ditch it behind a planter. So she was in line to go into Ticket and Transportation Center, and essentially she, as near as I can tell, because there's not much information on it yet, but as near as I can tell, she saw like the security checks and stuff and decided, oh crap, I have a gun, I better ditch this somewhere because I'm gonna get in trouble. Yes, you will. So this guest, she was from Lithonia, Georgia. After she ditched the gun behind the planter, the gun was in her purse, and she put the purse behind a planter. And there was a member of the Advent Health temperature check team that was there, noticed her take her purse, which was where the gun was, from the stroller that she had, and leave it behind a planter near the tent, the temperature check tent. They then alerted Disney security to the issue, and an Orange County Sheriff's deputy was on duty there, and the deputy went up to this lady and asked her why she'd brought a gun to Disney World. She ended up being arrested because she was carrying a concealed weapon and did not have a permit. But here's the part of this that really made me just super furious. So I'll just kind of go ahead and read this part. According to the Orlando Sentinel's Gabrielle Rousson, whatever, the guest, named Marcia Temple of Lithonia, Georgia, blamed her 6-year-old in the police report, stating he was supposed to, quote, supposed to be watching the gun, end quote. That makes me so furious. Not only did you bring a loaded handgun onto Disney property, but you then proceeded to blame your 6-year-old for the gun being there and for not watching the gun. It is a 6-year-old. Take responsibility for your own stupidity. Like, come on. Like, oh my goodness, I'm so fuming over this. Like, just admit that you were being an idiot and brought a gun, or even just play dumb and be like, oh, I didn't know that I couldn't bring this here, or play your the normal card that everybody plays. Oh, this is America, I can conceal carry. Which, as of a couple weeks ago, I think it was a couple weeks ago, you know my stance on that, because Disney World's private property, but whatever. But to blame your 6-year-old, and essentially, in the police report, essentially say that it was your 6-year-old's fault? Like, what is going through your head? Seriously. Like, oh my lord. But, anyway, like I said, she was arrested and charged with carrying a concealed firearm without a permit. And she has been banned from Walt Disney World property for life. She can never set foot back on Disney World property. That makes me happy. So, alright, third story. Disneyland Paris to remain closed through February 12th, 2021, with plans to reopen for Christmas season. So, and this is part of a story from a day or two ago, that Disneyland Paris will be closing again. They're closing on October 30th, which is tomorrow as of recording this. So it'll be Friday, October 30th. And the reason for this is that France is going into another lockdown. Emmanuel Macron, I think that's how you say his name, generally, the president of France has decided to put France into another lockdown. And France isn't the only one. Germany is also going into a lockdown and everything. But because France is going back into a lockdown, that means that Disneyland Paris has to shut down again. And at least as of right now, Disneyland Paris does not have any plans to reopen anytime before February 12th of next year, 2021. So this was the statement from Disneyland Paris. They said, in line with latest direction from the French authorities, Disneyland Paris will be closing end of day on October 29th, so that's today as of recording this. In anticipation of celebrating the Christmas holiday season, we will be taking reservations from December 19th to January 3rd and hope to be open based on prevailing conditions and government guidance at that time. Disneyland Paris will be closed from January 4th through February 12th. So as of right now, they're hoping to be able to open back up on December 19th for a holiday season celebration for Christmas, essentially. And then close back down January 3rd and stay closed until February 12th, roughly, before trying to open back up again. Now that may change. And so they may not be able to open back up at all. They may just end up staying closed until next February. Just depends on how things go. But they're closing again. Bottom line is they're closing again. Let's see. In France, had cases spike as high as 50,000 new cases per day last weekend. So that's the biggest reason that the French president made the decision to do this, to lock everything down again. So yeah, Disneyland Paris is closing again. So that's, fantastic news. All right. So the last two stories that I have, they're kind of related. One of them is a little irritating, but also I'm glad that somebody said it because I've been saying it Anna and I have been saying it for a while. And now I have something to compare it to, which is why I have the other article. So this one, the first one is Bob Chapek responds to Senator Warren's letter, still gives no explanation on how Disney restored senior executive pay amidst mass cast member layoffs. So essentially, Senator Warren had written a letter addressed to Bob Iger and Bob Chapek that, and she and then whoever wrote this article put a snippet of the actual letter in here. And essentially what it says, it starts out with, I write to express my concerns about the Walt Disney Company's recent decision to lay off 28,000 workers during an economic recession, while reinstating pay for highly compensated senior executives. Essentially what Senator Warren was saying, how the heck do you get off laying off 28,000 plus now, because they laid off more, 28,000 plus cast members, while restoring all of your senior executives who make millions of dollars in salary back to 100%. There is no reason that you should have pushed those back to 100% while laying off 28,000 people. And so Disney, Bob Chapek, and a couple of his spokesmen and everything for Disney as well had responded to it. And at one point, the spokesperson said that, what did they call it? Disney sidestepped the questions that she had in her letter by dismissing them as a closing bell segment on CNBC, with a company spokesperson simply stating that the letter was, quote, filled with inaccuracies. And as near as anyone can tell, it really wasn't filled with that many inaccuracies. But, and then Bob Chapek came out and said that, what did he say? Quote, indictment that our past actions somehow weaken. Because she talked about how the actions of Disney in the last few years with doing, like, buybacks of the stock and everything had weakened their financial cushion that they had to be able to do things like keep being able to pay their employees in a time like this where everyone is out of work. And so essentially he wrote back and was trying to, he's trying to do damage control, because essentially, as near as I can see from it, he knows that they've been caught, essentially. But at one point in his letter, or in his statement, he said, "As we have stated, given the ongoing uncertainties of this pandemic, including limits on capacity to promote social distancing, and the state of California's refusal to permit a safe reopening anytime soon," throwing California under the bus again, why not? "It unfortunately is not feasible to pay non-working employees indefinitely." So it's not feasible to pay your minimum wage employees indefinitely, but it's feasible for you to give millions back to your senior executives. That makes no sense to me. It just boggles my mind. And essentially, Senator Warren made a statement back saying, "Disney won't answer my questions because it has no good answers." The company said it was simply unfeasible to keep paying workers, yet has no explanation for how it was feasible to restore senior executive pay. And that's exactly what I've been saying. And she had even put through a list of, 7 questions? Yeah, 7 questions that she wanted Disney to answer. Because essentially all the questions were like, the first one is, what types of Disney employees will be laid off? Because it was written, part of it was written before the actual layoffs had happened. It was just when they announced that they were going to happen. And what's the cost of their total wages of those employees? Do any of them have recall rights? The second question was, how did you decide which employees would be laid off? And then the third one was, will Disney provide healthcare coverage for laid off employees? And so it was just this list of 7 questions that really Disney should have answered. But the problem was they couldn't, because they had no good answers. How did they decide who was going to be laid off? It was, near as anybody can tell, because Disney hasn't said any different, it was essentially a lottery. Near as we can tell, they just picked random names. So, I don't know. But related to that is this other story, which I came across, which is really fascinating to me. It is from Tokyo Disneyland. And the title of this article, I want you to listen to this. Oriental Land Company, which is the company that actually owns and runs Tokyo Disneyland, Oriental Land Company further reduces executive compensation amid disappointing Q2 for Tokyo Disney Resort. So while Disney executives are bumping their pay back up to 100%, the Oriental Land Company is slashing their senior executive salary even further than it already was. So, what this is that a lot of the executives had already been taking pay cuts of between 20 and 30%, roughly. Or about 10 to 30%. And are now being slashed even further. So, let's see, these cuts are expected to affect 21 executives and directors within the Oriental Land Company, and the following cuts will be made effective on November 1st, so just in a couple of days. The cuts include CEO Toshio Kagami. He will receive a salary reduction. His salary reduction will increase from 30% to 60%. So his salary was already decreased by 30%, and now it's going to be decreased up to 60%. So he's only going to get 40% of what he would normally get. Other executive level officers will have their salary reductions increased from 20 to 55%. The Board of Corporate Auditors will have their salary reductions increased from 20 to 50%. Operating officers, including COO Kyoichiro Uenishi, will have their salary reductions increased from 10% to 50%. So they're bumping up their salary reductions by a hefty margin. All of their top executives now are going to be making half or less than half of what their salary actually is. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor, Bob Chapek over here, has gone from his 50% pay cut back up to full pay. And that just seems wrong to me. It's just, to me, that in my mind, that's totally wrong. It's something that should not happen. Especially when you then turn around, after doing that, you then turn around and lay off 28,000 workers. Like, that's just, I don't understand it. But on that note, we'll end our news session for today, because that's a little bit much for one day. So hopefully there's better news next week. I really hope there is, but I guess we'll find out, won't we? So thank you all for joining me this week, and hopefully I will see you all back again next week. But until then, don't forget to thank the Phoenicians.